Hello everyone, Rest of Aquariumax here. I thought I'd get a little bit of an early start. Maybe some of you will get the notification that way. My schedule's a little bit more flexible today, so hopefully this is not messing you up too badly by starting early. But today, I'm going to be feeding my Opae Ula Shrimp. This is their aquarium. You can see, let me see if I can get this to work here a little bit. Last time I showed this macroalgae I'm growing was much smaller. It's been growing, which is good. There are shrimp everywhere, and I just put a pellet of goldfish food in. They're starting to collect around it. I'm hoping to get that into focus so that you can see the shrimp eat while we chat. So yeah, that's what I'd like to do today for a little while. So welcome everyone. I'm going to open up the chat so everybody can contribute if they would like to. I would like to know if it's in focus. I'll make some adjustments if it needs to be, better focused, whatever works. These are Halocaridina rubra, otherwise known as Hawaiian red shrimp or Hawaiian lava shrimp, Hawaiian cave shrimp. They've got several names. Opae Ula, super shrimp. Let's see, can we get that? Oh, that's not too bad. How's that? Is that okay, or should I play with the focus? Let me know what you think and what's working for you. I want to get some decent focus on these shrimp as they begin to eat. It looks like we got 7 people in the house. For some reason I'm not seeing any messages, so I'm going to see if I can make that work. Yeah, why am I not seeing any messages at all? I'm not sure why I'm not. So I'm going to check this out and see if I've got any messages. Oh, now it's showing up, but it's showing up only on my iPad. So it looks like Acro Yang, Mr. Snake, Casey Gunter, Supreme Gecko, all in the house. Good. Good, excellent. I'm glad it's working. For some reason I'm not seeing any of the chat on my iPad, but it's okay because it's showing up here, or it's showing up on my iPad. I've got it streaming from my phone, so I can follow along with the chat. And can you hear me all right? Is that good? Good so far, hopefully. Let's see, make sure that the chat is on the right, yeah, so everybody can chat. We're all in. Very nice. So things that have been going on lately. I have been working on getting another tank going for my Opae Ula. I have that in my office at work. It's producing larval shrimp now, so that's good. I just noticed today. So yes, my shrimp at work are breeding right now. I have some floating larvae right now. I have floating larvae in one of my other tanks, so I have 4 tanks currently. I dismantled one as, the process of setting up one is dismantling one, so I didn't have a net gain or loss. I have the same number, so I now have 4. And so breeding in 2 of the enclosures, or 2 of the tanks so far. In this tank, I haven't seen any breeding behavior recently. In the past, I've seen tons. But since I moved this upstairs, I haven't seen any breeding behavior in this tank, but I'm sure I will soon. They're doing pretty well. I also had you haven't missed a whole lot, Jay's Crazy Obsessions, because I just started, and so you haven't missed a whole lot. I just noticed today that I have, for the first time, my Phidippus audax, which is the bold jumping spider. I have 2 of them, male and female. The female just released a little batch of spiderlings. That is the first time I have had jumping spiderlings, which is kind of cool. I thought she was just building an extra thick molt sack, but that's not what it was. It was an egg case. And so now I have a number of spiderlings. I'm still not sure how many, but they're really cute, really tiny. I might show them to you at some point today. I released most of the mantids because they're a mantis that occurs here in the wild here. And of course they're introduced, they're not natives, but they've been released widely, and so they already exist here. Released most of them, kept 3 little mantids, have 3 of the baby mantids in the house and raising those, so that's fun. But I love this when the shrimp do their feeding frenzy. It's fun to watch. So let's see. I'm glad there's no buzzing. The audio is good. Thank you. And for these guys, Jay's Crazy Obsessions, I use distilled water is the best choice. Distilled water, and then you use half-strength seawater. So if the seawater mix calls for half a cup, I put 1/4 of a cup per gallon, and they do great at that. They can also do well at higher and lower salinities, but that's about where it is. And Isaac French, these are actually not neos, these are Halocaridina rubra, the Hawaiian Opae Ula Shrimp. So they're different. And thanks Supreme Gecko, thanks Wally. And Nazi06, hey, welcome. So yep, not Neocaridina, these are Halocaridina. They are in the same family, Ataidae family, but quite a bit different. These don't get nearly as big as Neocaridina. The largest ones you see in here, about probably 1/3 of an inch long. And they do get a little bigger than that, but not a lot. They are really tiny. Really, really tiny shrimp. So, and some eggs. Do they eat fruit and vegetables? Well, they will eat nearly anything. In the wild, since they live in caves underground during much of their life and ascend to surface pools temporarily to feed, they will eat algae, they will eat dead bugs, they will eat fruit if it falls in the water, they'll eat almost anything. But I tend to, well, in the enclosure in this aquarium, as you see, they eat algae mostly and biofilm, but occasionally I feed them fish food. This tank only gets fish food maybe once a month, and that's all it needs because they are always grazing on the algae and the biofilm. Since they live in caves, they have slower metabolisms than most shrimp and don't eat nearly as much. So they, in the wild, they'll ascend to the pools, fairly rarely, and they can last for years without supplemental feeding. But I do like to feed them a little bit anyway, and it does improve their breeding if you feed them a little. If you feed them a lot, they actually slow down and stop breeding. Their babies are very sensitive to excess nutrients in the water, so if you are giving too many nutrients, they tend not to breed. They'll stop. And let's see, Casey. Oh, that's okay. I am an educator by trade. That's what I do, and I've done that in various capacities in various institutions. But yeah, I currently work at the university in an educationary capacity, if you want to say that. So Supreme Gecko, you need to consider their calcium requirements when selecting food. Not really, because their substrate contains plenty of calcium. This is an aragonite substrate, and you do need to make sure the water is buffered with some kind of calcium carbonate structure, whether it's crushed coral or aragonite or something like that. You could use crushed eggshells. You do need something like that to keep the water pH appropriate, and so I do that, and that takes care of all their calcium requirements. Good question. Thanks, Wally. Paraplaneta missionary, how are the velvet ants doing? I'll shoot to start up an ant colony. Well, I have good news and bad news about the velvet ants. One of the velvet ants is doing extremely well, the largest one that I got. I think it is probably Dacimutilla occidentalis. That one is doing extremely well. The other 2 passed away just about, I want to say, 8 to 10 days after I got them, which was really upsetting for me, really sad. Since they arrived and were doing so well, I don't think it was anything that Peter did. I think Peter did great. They arrived happy and healthy, not his fault at all. They were fine. But I don't think it was a husbandry issue, partly because I've kept velvet ants before very successfully for much longer periods of time, and I didn't change anything except to improve their prospects, give them more options for feeding. So I don't think it was that. I am just wondering if it was their time or, it's hard to say. I was so sad about that because I made sure they had several sources of food and water available and everything, but within a few days, for the first few days they were active and everything, they did fine, and then suddenly I noticed, oh, where are the velvet ants? And I saw that the two, I found them, and they were still alive at the time, but they were not doing very well. They had slowed down, weren't moving much, and I have no idea. So, was really, really sad about that. Still am. I'm pretty bummed. I'm glad the last one is doing fine. I've been trying to review the husbandry and make sure that there's not something I'm missing. But again, having kept velvet ants for much longer, very successfully in the past, I don't think that's it, and I don't think there was any problem with them when they arrived, so I'm trying to narrow it down. No idea. But at least the one is doing well, and I'm hopefully going to be able to obtain some more. But I'm just really bummed. I really loved those little guys. I didn't have them for very long, but they were pretty awesome. So thanks everyone who's sending me your condolences. I appreciate that, and it really did set me back, made me pretty sad. Velvet ants, like I've said before, are one of my favorite insects, so that was hard. Yep, sorry, I think my son's getting the doorbell. There. Yeah, I love Peter. I think Peter's great. There's nothing, I would not say Peter did anything wrong at all. I'm sure he was, did what he needed to do. And like I said, they arrived completely active and looking great. I would not, in my wildest dreams, ever think Peter did anything wrong with them. So, yeah. I'm not concerned there. I've never had a problem with anything Peter sent me, so I agree. I think it could just be old age. They don't live all that long. 0 to 2 years in captivity. Peter does mention on his website, he says, these live for 0 to 2 years. There's no guarantees, something like that, when you get them, because they might be old. So that could just be that. That's very possible. And Acro Young, have you tried keeping any centipedes? Yes, I've kept several Scolopendra polymorpha. Have one right now. Have that had that individual for is it it's either 2 or 3 years. A little more than 2 or a little more than 3 years. It's one of those. I think it's a little bit more than 2. Alright, and yeah, Heather Jensen says, no, silicone smells like vinegar when you apply it, but my newest terrarium still smells like vinegar after a week, and I'm not wanting to stock it because of the odor. Thoughts? Huh. That is weird that it's not airing out. As long as the silicone is, properly solidifying, I wouldn't worry too much if it's been an entire week. It might take a little longer for the acetic acid to outgas completely, but I don't think it's unsafe at this point. Generally, we can keep fish in it after 24 hours, as you probably know, and you can keep, I think it reaches its full strength at, I think it's 7 days, so you're probably okay with it, just if there's just a small amount of the acetic acid odor. Yes?
Okay, don't look at anything.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, my birthday's coming up, and I think they're bringing a birthday present in, and they don't want me to see it, which is cool. I don't want to ruin the surprise. So how are the poison arrow frogs progressing? They're doing well. My trio of adults that I've had for a while doing well. I'm contemplating whether I want to seriously encourage them to produce some more tadpoles this summer or not. They've, for those of you who are newer, they have produced already a few clutches of eggs. I raised 3 tadpoles this past year and sold off the tadpoles once they became froglets. So yeah. And thank you for the birthday wishes. Yeah. I'm hoping to get some critter related things that I will show you in some future videos. So thank you. Oh yeah, the Maltese. Okay. So Wally is asking about the Maltese, and I'm looking over at him here. So, excuse me. The Maltese are doing pretty well. Here is what I'm thinking. I want to do an update video on them. I have 3 bags of escargot shells. One's not entirely full. It's probably 3/4 full. And the other 2 bags are entirely full and unopened. I want to put some more shells in there. In the wild, in many cases, they have, a bed of shells that's 2 or 3 shells thick or even deeper in the wild, and that's all they've got. They just got wall-to-wall shells in their territories. And I'm thinking of adding all of those shells, taking out some of the sand, possibly putting some, maybe some plastic plants in there because the sand and the shells are not going to be very friendly to plants. I've tried putting plants in. Also, the lighting's not very good for plants. Even things like Java fern, I've tried putting Java fern in there. It doesn't do very well. So I'm thinking of putting maybe some plastic Velocinaria in there, but I'm not sure. I'm not a big plastic plant fan. Prefer live plants, but we'll see. And they are producing fry. I have there are 2 clutches of fry in there right now that are pretty small. Unfortunately, one of the clutches has the spinal deformities that is, not too uncommon in Maltese that have had some inbreeding going on. So I'm going to have to cull those 2. The other clutch looks fine. I don't think it's going to have that problem. What I am going to try to do, there's a place called Live Fish Direct, which is fairly close to where I live. It's about an hour and 20 minutes, something like that. I think it's about an hour away. And I am going to try to get some additional Maltese to add to the colony and dump all the shells in at the same time so that the colony's territories get rearranged as they add these, and then maybe I'll get some better bloodlines going and I won't have to worry so much about the problems with the spinal deformities which show up. Okay, so let's see. So I'm going to make a video of that. Hopefully that helps Wally, give you a little bit of an update. Also, one of my birthday presents I've asked for as a possibility relates to the Maltese, but I am not sure if I'm going to get it yet. So after my birthday occurs, I'll let you know at some point whether or not that worked out, and if it did, I'll make a video about it that relates to the Maltese. So, Igris, would you keep dwarf geckos? Yeah, totally. I'm actually really interested in the Tropiocolotes geckos. Supreme Gecko right on here. You can check out his channel. He's got some. I was just looking at a little baby one on his Facebook page. There's some really cool geckos. I love the way they move their tails. They can live in colonies. They're really tiny. I also love the Spherodactylus geckos. Someday I'd like to do some Spherodactylus geckos. Phelsuma clemeri are another dwarf gecko that I'm really fascinated by. So yes, definitely. I do have mourning geckos, which don't get more than about 3.5 inches or 4 inches maybe. And so I do have some of those, but those are the smallest gecko species that I've kept so far. So according to Bush, says Opae Ula, the first content of yours I saw was on these shrimp. Yeah, some of my oldest videos are actually on Opae Ula. I have videos from like 2012 or something on Opae Ula, pretty old videos. And Heather Jensen, any plants you would recommend for a Pacman frog? I know they can be rough on plants. You know what I would do? I think if I were going to keep a Pacman frog, which is something I have considered, I would probably put like a cork bark background in, and then put some creeping fig up along the back. One of the ficus ones, either the oak leaf or the just the pumila, normal variety of pumila, something like that. It's going to be right up against the back and is not going to be damaged, and I'm going to have to cut it back fairly regularly, but it'll grow right up the back wall, but it'll still be rooted in the substrate, so it'll be providing, the ecosystem benefits of a plant, but it's going to be out of the frog's way. And then I might also try some of I know that the Biodude, when he's setting up Vivaria for really robust animals, will often use some of the ferns that can take a lot of beating. They can be sat upon, like the Korean rock fern can be sat upon, and then as soon as the animal leaves, it bounces back. So I might consider something like that as well. Or maybe one of the Pothos varieties that grows up along the back of the vivarium again and stays off the ground mostly, so that the frog is not bugging it. That's probably what I would try. Okay, so Jay's Crazy Obsessions, will you talk about how you do a water change with seawater or salt water? Okay, well for these shrimp, you don't need to do water change really very often at all, if ever, because just the way they work and their low bioload and their low metabolism and everything, you really don't do water changes. You just top off with distilled water, and you can go for years that way, and they will breed and they will thrive and they will grow and they will multiply and be happy. So there's that. But to do a change with seawater in general, and I've done this with my marine tanks that I've had in the past, basically you need to make sure the tank is topped off first before you do the water change. So you're always topping off with distilled water or RO water, something like that, so that you're not changing the salinity, because the marine animals are really pretty accustomed to a very specific salinity. And then when you do a water change, you just do it the same way you do in freshwater, but you need to make sure that you mix up the salt water ahead of time, generally 24 hours ahead of time, and check the salinity to make sure what's going in is the same as what you're taking out in terms of salinity, so you're not shocking anybody. And in many cases, you want to also make sure the temperature is very, very close too, which you can do by just putting a heater in there. And to make sure it mixes well, you're generally running a pump of some kind in the mixing container so that the salt mixes very, very thoroughly. So hopefully that helps. So Casey Gunter, what do you think about pothos and reptile enclosures? Depends on the size. If you have a big enough one, then certainly it can work. I think that many people underestimate the capacity of pothos to grow. I have a pothos plant right now that is growing out of my Endler tank, and it is easily 9 feet long, and the stem is probably 3/4 of an inch thick in some places, and the leaves are probably 2 or 3 times the size of most pothos plants you see. It gets big. When I lived in Hawaii, I would see it's kind of an invasive plant in Hawaii, and it will grow up the palm trees and so on, and you can find leaves that are easily 1.5 feet long, so it gets huge. So I would say pothos can be something that goes crazy, just the normal pothos that you think of, the general, I think the scientific name is Epipremnum aureum, something like that. That plant can go nuts in enclosures, and it might just overtake the enclosure if you're not careful. So in a small enclosure, like a 10-gallon tank, I wouldn't do it. Maybe in like a 40-gallon I would, or something bigger than that. But yeah, I might go with something a little smaller, one of the philodendrons instead, if I'm going with a smaller enclosure. And Miley says the amount of shrimp on screen is about how many guppies I have. Yeah, there's a lot in there, and there are quite a few that are off screen too. I'm just focusing on a little corner. Of course, a lot of them are concentrated in that spot. But yeah, it's kind of fun to have guppies like that or shrimp like that and just see them swarm, isn't it? So David Rodriguez, have you tried keeping leaf chameleons? Ooh, that sounds intriguing. I haven't, but it sounds fun. And yeah, Wally, I'm excited about trying that. I think they have F2s, maybe. I'll try to find out what they've got, but it would be nice to get some new bloodlines in there. This particular tank is supposed to have descended from 4 different bloodlines, but I think they've been mixed so long that it kind of doesn't matter anymore. And thank you, everyone, for the birthday wishes. I appreciate it. And yes, Jay's Crazy Obsession Fish for You does have them, but they're very expensive. I've actually talked to Carrie there at Fish for You about doing a bloodline trade, and I might do that too. But the problem is I don't get down there very often because it is a good distance from my house. And I used to live 3 minutes away, but when I moved, no, I don't. So I may do that too. And I may do both because they've always got them in stock, but they cost a pretty penny there. They're a little cheaper at the other place that I was thinking of. Hey, Akro Ying, you're right. And in fact, I'm almost to 20,000 subscribers. I'm getting really close, so that's kind of exciting. And hello, Pokesaurus. You got to meet Robert Bacher in real life. That's awesome. I had a chance to meet him once too. He's a cool guy, and he is a famous paleontologist. For those of you who might not know who he is, he's very cool. I've read at least one of his books, and he's one of the he has contributed a lot to paleontology today, so he's a cool guy. Let's see. Heather Jensen says, I love the oak leaf. I have a neat carved wooden mask. It will be affixing the back wall of the decor item. Cool. Yeah, and maybe you can get the oak leaf to grow up there. That would be cool. So the water to sit for 24 hours, Jay's Crazy Obsessions, is for 2 things. One can help you equalize the temperature, and another is to make sure that the salt is completely dissolved as you're letting it circulate, as well as just sitting there. It's also circulating with the filter, or not the pump that you're using to do that. So Miley Morkey, how do I grab wild Porcelia salvage without accidentally hurting them? I have long nails to reduce harm, but I did harm one yesterday. Well, that can sometimes happen, but generally what I do is, before you develop the capacity to touch, feel how hard you can pick them up without hurting them, which does come with experience. You can scoop them up onto a leaf or a piece of paper or something, kind of use a paintbrush to brush them into a paper cup or something you hold up against the ground, that often works. So Heather Jensen's kind of doing what I'm doing. She has them growing up a wall with the clear command hooks. That's awesome. You know, I bought some clear command hooks to work with my Pothos. It unfortunately didn't work because the critter room where I have the Pothos growing, it's in a northern window, which is perfect for Pothos, has this stuff on the wall that it's a rough textured plastic coating kind of thing. I don't know what it is exactly, but it's very, very rough, very, very hard. And so I couldn't stick the command hooks in it and to it because it says not to do it on rough surfaces. So what I ended up doing is just using a drill, drilling small holes in the wall, and then using metal hooks that I just screwed into the windowsill. And I've been adding those as necessary. First I had it grow all along the bottom, and I did use the command hooks to stick it to the windowsill, which is smooth, kind of guide it through the windowsill. But when it went from one side of the windowsill to the other, then I started adding the hooks, and now I have 3 hooks in the side of the windowsill and 1 or 2 hooks in the top as it's starting to grow. It's pretty cool. It's fun stuff. Oh, Casey, you want to see the rest of the tank for a minute? I can do that. Just a second. I'm going to pull it out of the tripod clip. We'll see the rest of the tank. You can see there's shrimp kind of traveling everywhere, and you can see me in the background. There you go. You can also see some of the snails down at the bottom. And this mackerel, nobody knows what species it is. It's thought to be a type of Chaetomorpha, but we don't really know what type it is. It's pretty cool because it doesn't stick to glass. It grows in these clumps, and little bits will break off and form new clumps. That's where this clump came from. But I think I broke these 2 clumps when I originally got the clump, which is much smaller than either of these clumps. It's probably close in size to this one. And now I have clumps growing in my office, 3 big clumps and 1 small clump growing in my office, and 3 big clumps growing here. Good stuff and really fun. You can also see some baby moss balls. There's one right in the middle of the screen there. These grow extremely slowly. They're not the Marimo moss balls you can buy in the pet store. This is one that thrives in fairly high salinity water, and there are a ton of baby ones all over the tank. As I scroll through, maybe you can see a few of them around. They're tiny. There's some in the back there. There's a little clump of them right in the middle of the screen by the lava rock. They're all over the bottom there from a larger ball. There's another one in the middle of the screen right now from a larger ball that I had that sort of disintegrated, but into little balls that are growing. So it's pretty cool. So there you go, Casey. I hope that helped. I hope that satisfied your craving for a better look at the tank at large. Oh, sorry about that. Bumped right into the camera. Having a clumsy moment. There you go. All right. So, and HC Aqua. Hello, welcome. And Wally, have I considered keeping killifish? Indeed, I have. Since I have really hard water where I am, I've thought about keeping some of the Nothobranchius, like Nothobranchius rancovi or something like that. I think that would be super cool. I haven't done it yet, but I've thought about it. I think that would be one I'd have a lot of fun with. It would be kind of counterproductive probably to keep some of the softwater killies in my area, just considering how hard the water is, but I think something like a Nothobranchius would be really cool. And let's see. Hey! Thank you for the like spike request. Looks like we've gotten past 15, so that's awesome. And yeah, HC Aqua, I have 4 Opae Ula tanks actually. This is one of them, and I got these when I got my original Opae Ula, and the descendants of those originals are in this tank. Back in 2000, I want to say 2004 or 2005 when I lived on Oahu. They were sent to me from the Big Island, though. But yeah. Do you have any Opae Ula, HC Aqua? And thanks, Casey. Glad you liked that. I'm glad it was fun for you. Oh, there's one of my bigger adults right there in the middle of the screen. You know, that is probably, I don't even think that's ½ an inch long. So these are tiny little shrimp. And Heather Jensen. So could the algae be offshoots of your moss balls? Moss balls aren't actually moss and usually need a current to roll them so they get round. This is the funny thing. I'm glad you mentioned that, because these are two very distinct species, these two types of moss. Both the Marimo moss balls, well, the Marimo moss balls that people buy in pet stores will die in this salinity. It's just too high for them. So they'll look green and stay green for a little while, but they'll die in it. And this type of moss ball, it's undiscovered. The species is undescribed, and it does not need to be rolled to get round. It's weird. It's totally different the way it grows. Under a microscope, it looks totally different. I just saw one of the shrimp rolling one of them around on the left side of the screen, rolling it around a little bit. But these don't need to be rolled around, and they stay much smaller. The biggest size they get is about an inch in diameter, approximately about that size. And Mustafa from petshrimp.com has a video on YouTube of a tank that is completely covered in them. He doesn't mess with them. The bottom of the tank is 2 or 3 thick, and they're all about an inch in diameter, and he hasn't rolled them, and they're all staying that way. And they've been there for years. So these are a very different plant, or very different algae, I should say, not a true plant. Very different algae, and he sells both of these types of algae, the macroalgae that acts like chaetomorpha and the mini moss balls, and that's where I got both of them. So, and they do have very specific characteristics that are very, very interesting. The chaetomorpha-like algae has very long strands, and the moss balls stay very compact and round all the time. Very weird stuff. And Miley, which would you like to clean your hands? Cleaner shrimp or ghost shrimp? I want to say I may have had that opportunity. I'm trying to remember. It seems like I've had shrimp clean my hands before, but I want to say it was probably a banded cleaner shrimp. That seems to make sense. I'm not sure. But either one, it would be fun. I actually have done the gara, have garas, I think it's gara rufa. Yeah, gara rufa nibble on my hands before. The doctor fish, they're pretty cool. Done that a couple of times. So Jay's obsessions. Do you guys think a full-grown Pacman frog could live in a 41-quart tub at 77 degrees? I've never kept Pacman frogs, but 77 seems probably okay. I think a lot of people try to keep them too warm, warmer than they need to be, because in the wild, you know, they're in the forest floor and they kind of bury themselves and get out of the heat a little bit. So I think 77 would be fine. And let's see. According to Bush says, with the summer upon us, what are your recommendations on ordering isopods? Would waiting until the fall be a better route? Well, I don't ship a lot of isopods in July and August. I will still ship them if I put a cold pack in. I'll put a cold ice pack in, and I will insist, at least strongly suggest that people, well, no, I have to put a cold pack in, I have to ship in the medium priority box. I can't do it in the small priority box. It's just not a good idea, because there's just not enough insulation. There's not enough, you can't really fit a cold pack in one of those little boxes. So in the medium priority box with a cold pack, I think it's probably okay as long as the temperature outside is not over 95 degrees in my location or yours. If it's hotter than that, I would say wait. The weather has not been particularly hot this summer in my area, so if it's okay in your area, you know, I would say go ahead. I mean, assuming you're talking about ordering from me, and you may not be, but basically, yeah, that's what I would say. It's not the best time to ship. If you want to be super safe, wait until the fall. September is usually great. October is usually great. I find that the best shipping times for me in my area, at least, September, October, November are great. December can be a little dicey. January too. February is usually okay, and then it's fine until the end of June, and then it starts getting a little tricky again. But it's very possible. So, and R. Robinson, yeah, thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying it. HC Aqua says, I used to keep them in the small containers when it was popular to do so, but I've since stopped doing that after learning how it wasn't ideal to do so. Yeah, I know what you mean. My first ones were in smaller containers. The biggest container I had them in at first was a half-gallon when I lived in Hawaii, and then I had some smaller ones too. And they were not breeding for me. I moved them to a 1.25-gallon container when I came back to the mainland, and they were breeding within a month or two. And then I've found that the larger the container, the more readily they breed in general. I have a 2-gallon, a 3-gallon, a 5.5-gallon, and a 10-gallon, and they've done the most breeding in the 10-gallon. They breed fairly regularly in the 5.5, and they breed occasionally in the other two smaller ones. So, well, maybe more than occasionally, but they don't breed as crazily in the smaller tanks. Generally in the 10, it was weird not to see 20 or more larvae floating at the top until I moved it, and things started, they decreased breeding, and that's not unusual when you move them. But I would usually look in there and see 20 plus larvae at any given time. It was unusual not to, and now I hope as soon as they get a little more settled, they'll do that again. But the 5.5 gallon that I set up a couple of months ago, there's already larvae, and there are lots of buried females in there. So, yeah. Okay, yeah, if you're in South Texas, I'd wait, probably till October. The keep, would you recommend Narcissus americanus as a beginner millipede? My boyfriend wants to send me some as a gift. I haven't kept Narcissus americanus, and I would say, from what little I know of them, I know general millipede things, and I've heard that they do tend to bury themselves more than some others. If he wants to give you some as a gift, I would say ivory millipedes are a great one because they cost about the same. They have very similar requirements, but they're a lot more active at the surface. They're a little smaller, but they're beautiful millipedes. That would be a great species to work with. That would be my 2 cents there. But I think the 41 quart tub Jay's Crazy Obsessions is big because Pacman frogs do not move a lot. They're not the most active creatures. It's not like they're going to need a ton of exercise space because they're just ambush predators and don't really make use of it anyway. So I think you're going to be fine there. And there are a lot of creatures that could live in a rack at 77 degrees. Sure, tons of them. You could do lots of isopods. There are millipedes that could live at that temperature. There are other reptiles and amphibians that could live at that temperature. So you got a lot of choices there. Yep, and you're welcome to keep. Glad that helped. And Heather Jensen, yeah, I agree. I think 20 gallon is plenty and may even be excessive. So I totally agree. Yep. So, looks like we've got we've got about 6 minutes left to chat. It looks like we've got a lot of shrimp going on here. They're doing well there. I don't know if you can see how red these shrimp get. They can get super red. Some of them are intensely red, and some of them are not. I don't think any of them in the tank right now are as red as they can get. They can get very red. I just don't know how much it's showing up because I'm partially colorblind, and so red does not register to me quite as vividly as it seems to most people. So I'm not sure, but hopefully you're seeing some redness going on there. I do see that some individuals are much darker than others. The thing is, these shrimp color up in response to various stimuli. Light causes them to color up a little bit more than, they'll pale out to almost completely transparent in the dark, and then when they get into light, they'll redden up. Stress can cause them to pale out and things like that. All right. So I hope it wasn't too bad that I did this early. I wanted to ask everybody what you're thinking about that, because I had a chance to do it early, and I was just kind of hoping that that would be okay. I feel like the next few weeks in the summer I could do it earlier in the day if that's good for people, or if you need me to keep it at around 5:30 or 6, I could probably do that, but for a few weeks I'm going to be able to do it early. And so if that's going to be easier for people to attend, then let me know. It looks like, I don't know, is the chat frozen? Or what happened here? I'm not seeing any more movement on the chat. Oh, here it comes. I'm seeing some. Heather Jensen, I'm super excited getting 5 Bulimulus sporadicus land snails in the next few days. I had a snail hitchhike in for my Louisiana trip, and now I'm hooked on snails. Cool. I've kept a couple of terrestrial snails myself. They're pretty fun. I don't know that species though. I'm interested in finding out more about it because, let's see, Bulimulus sporadicus. I gotta look this up. Bulimulus sporadicus. Here it is. Oh, cool. How big are those? They look a lot like they look smaller, I think. Yeah, they are smaller. Okay. their shape and general coloration and so on is very similar to Achatina fulica, which is the giant African land snail that we used to see in Hawaii all the time. In Hawaii, when I lived there, these huge snails were all over the place, and I remember once walking towards the library and seeing a shoe on the ground, saying, "Oh, someone left their shoe there." And as I got closer, I realized it was a snail the size of a shoe, and they get huge. We love to find those when we lived in Hawaii. Of course, they're illegal on the mainland, and they're invasive in Hawaii, but they're pretty cool. So Jay's crazy obsessions. My biggest concern is light. My ball pythons love being in the dark, but do you think a frog would mind being in the dark 24/7 unless I'm handling? I would actually. Okay, Mark. I am trying to improve the volume. Hopefully that helps. I want to make sure that you can all hear me. I would probably give some additional. Make sure you have a photo period for him, Jay's crazy obsessions. I think he's probably going to need some light. Since they're visual hunters and so on, I would recommend, even if it's just, it doesn't have to be super bright. It doesn't have to be like a light fixture above the tank, but I would say you need some ambient daylight for the frog during the day. So, yeah. Oh, those are super cool snails. I like those. They do really look like a mini African land snail. I think they're super cool. How big do they get? I see one on someone's hand here, and it looks like it's about as long as one joint of the finger. But, yeah, those are cool. Oh, yeah, HC Aqua. I think I did that too when I lived in Hawaii. I think I accidentally stepped on one of those snails, and it's a rather large snail to accidentally step on, isn't it? Not a pleasant experience. All right, well, I'm glad you were all able to join me. It's just about time to wrap up here, just about 6 o'clock, so I really appreciate everyone coming. I appreciate the likes. Looks like we got up to 20 likes, which is not bad. And please be on the lookout for my next video on Friday, and have a great evening.